y'all, I am Hope of Crafty Hope and welcome. I am working on ICAD number 50. Now, here's the spiel. ICAD means Index Card a Day and comes from Tammy Garcia. She has weekly themes and daily prompts to help you on your creative journey. I am not using her prompt today, which is Detour, but my friend Nina Fickett has also her own prompts each day. Woo, that was hard to get out. And today's prompt from Nina, which is the mixed media ICAD, that's her prompts. It's Crackle paste. And y'all, I love me some Crackle paste. And I thought about this when I wrote it down. I was like, oh yeah, Crackle paste, love that stuff. But then I was like, oh my gosh, it takes forever for Crackle paste to dry. And it's not really forever. It's just longer than I've really been trying to let these cards be, because I'm trying to do them fairly quickly so that I can get them up each day for you. And I even thought about maybe doing some Crackle paste on some other paper and tearing that and collaging it down. But this morning I was like, you know what? I'll give myself a few minutes. I'll turn it off and turn off the camera and let it crackle and all of that, because Crackle paste does best when it air dries and not heat dries. So anyway, I am going to use the Crackle paste despite my trying to convince myself otherwise. So for my cards, I've been trying to work through a couple scrap boxes. You can see one of those over here on the left. That's one of two of them. I started with just one and it ballooned to two at some point. And these are just scraps of things that end up on my desk after other projects, or I find floating around the craft room or whatever, and they just need a spot. So they go in these boxes. And so I've been trying to work through them for ICAD so that I can make more scraps. So today the box was, this one anyway, was upside down. And since they're clear, I could see all these little bits of yummy that were on the bottom that are tiny little things. And I decided, yep, I'm going to use these tiny little bits today. I don't care. Yesterday I made the realization that it's kind of a weird thing, that it doesn't matter if I use the same materials and colors and supplies over and over again. That's kind of what defines my style. And I've struggled for a long time to try to find my style. And just, I don't know why. I just haven't thought, use the same stuff, Hope. So, yeah. So I'm going to use some of the same things I used yesterday. Not completely, but somewhat. But anyway, I use my Ooh glue stick and I have glued down all of these bits of scraps of randomness. And do you see that piece over there on the right? It looks like a lion. And I noticed this here in a little bit. I think I do a freeze frame so y'all could see it maybe. But I'm not going to roll with it because that's not my style. It's not what feels good to me. It would be a struggle for me to do that, and that's not what these ICADs are supposed to be about. They're supposed to be fun little experimental things, and granted, that's an experiment, but it's not one I wanted to take today. So there is too much going on here with all of that collage. I like the texture. I don't like all of the color. So I've put just a couple dabs of gesso down, and I'm using this silicone brush thing to just scrape that gesso around. And because I'm making sure I scrape it really thin, it's picking up all of that texture. So that I am loving. So as I scrape it, it's here in a second. Oh, maybe it's after I dry it that I realize it. So I'm getting this really thin, and I am going to dry it even though it's that thin. So I'll grab my heat gun and go ahead and dry this. And somewhere in here, yep, there, I see that looks like a lion to me with the mane and the tail. And I thought about using it as a lion for a second, but like I said, it just did not feel like me, like my style, like I could really do it justice. So I'm going to move on. I felt like using some Payne's Gray today. So I grabbed a little bit of that and wet it down. And then I'm using this paintbrush that I end up not really liking to kind of move that Payne's Gray around on the card. And once I get it down, I'm going to switch to a different brush that I like a little bit more to help me bleed out some of that Payne's Gray. I didn't want it super thick on here. I just wanted a little bit of that color on there to help block out some of the other colors that were going on and maybe kind of get rid of that lion shape a little bit. So I'm going to let that water move around a little bit, and then I'm going to try this as well. And then sitting on my desk for some reason was this pot of gold paint. It's the Modern Masters Metallic Paint Matte Finish Olympic Gold is what it is. And so I've got it out. And like I said, it just happened to be on my desk. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to use that. That'll look really nice on top of this Payne's Gray. So I've got a tiny, tiny palette knife that I am using to just randomly get this gold paint on here. And the whole time I'm thinking, okay, am I going to use the Crackle paste? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I still hadn't decided. It's also on my desk just in case. Oh, and y'all, look at this. I had done a project yesterday and used a popsicle stick with glue on it and made what now looked like a shaggy popsicle. I was cracking myself up with that. All right, so I'm going to try this super quick. And I decided to add a little bit of extra texture with some stamping. So I have my Distress Oxide and Black Soot and one of my hand-carved eraser stamps. I'll put a link in the upper right to how I do that. But these are just like some little X's that I carved. They're shaggy as well. And anyway, I just wanted them kind of just to have a little bit of extra, like I said, texture on there. Something with a little more, I don't know, something, something. And then I think, okay, I'm going to do the Crackle paste, but I'm going to do it through a stencil. Normally, I just like to scrape Crackle paste on things, but I wanted some kind of defined shape. So I found a couple stencils that had defined shapes and ended up deciding on this one that's a silhouette of a little boy and a little girl. It's an Andy Skinner stencil, I believe. And I open my Crackle paste and I decide that this stencil, I was afraid it would move around quite a bit on me, so I go fishing for my masking tape to tape down the edges of this to my desk and to the card so that it doesn't move too much. Because if it did move, I knew I would lose that shape, and I didn't want to lose it. Now it's not super great what comes of it, but it's good. It works. So here I am taping this down in every which way I can so that it doesn't move. And then I'm going to use that silicone brush thing again to just scrape the Crackle paste onto my card. And I'm making sure it's on there enough to be defined, but I don't need it to be like consistent. If you know anything about Crackle paste, where it is thicker, you get bigger crackles, and where it is thinner, you get smaller crackles. And like I said, it's best to let it air dry. So I'm going ahead and peeling up this with the tape. I did tear a little bit of my card right there. So I'm going to grab that gold paint again and just dab it because that's all that was there really. So I dabbed that down. And I'm going to clean up my desk and let this air dry. And when I come back, it looks, oh, so good. And I sharpened up a Stabilo all pencil in black, and I am very carefully and deliberately going around this silhouette. I am the world's worst about tracing something and just making a mess of it, so I'm trying to be as like careful and deliberate as I can to go around this little boy and this little girl. And then I'm going to grab a really thin paintbrush and activate that Stabilo really to give them shadow and to make them become more focal on this card. So, and then again, this is going to take me a little while. I'm wetting that paintbrush, but I'm trying to make sure it's not too wet because I don't want the Stabilo to bleed too much into that Crackle because I wanted it to stay as stark white as possible so that it pops. I didn't mind it bleeding out from the Crackle paste stencil, but I didn't want it to bleed into it. So I was being really deliberate with how I did this. And I am going to come back in a second with it a little more wet just to put some shadow in a couple spots that I didn't feel like it got. And I'm also going to, in a minute, draw a line across where their feet are to give them something to stand on so they're not just like floating on the card, if that makes any sense. Oh, I did get a little bit on the Crackle. Oh, did you see that? I just looked at it and I'm like, oh, it is there, but it's okay. It kind of goes with some of the dark areas that are on the card anyway. So, I try to be careful, but yeah, it doesn't always work, y'all. I'm a clumsy, clumsy girl. All right, and while my camera had been off, I pulled out a couple things to put a sentiment on here, played with some ideas because I had to wait 15 minutes or so for that Crackle to do its magic. And what I ended up pulling out were the Tim Holtz Big Chat stickers. And also, what else did I pull out? I had pulled out a piece of fabric that I thought I was going to use. I'll show you that in a second. But I decided it's coffee dyed and it's, I don't know, too muddy or something. It just doesn't seem to work. It takes up some of the focal from my little couple there. So the words I picked out were journey together. And I'm going to put those straight down onto the card and then go around them with my Stabilo, just like, well, there was a little bit more water there. I tried to get up. So I'm going to go around them with my Stabilo just like I did with my boy and my girl, and I'll activate that as well. And once I get it activated, there's something about it that seemed like too stark white, because even that white Crackle paste isn't super stark white because the crackles are letting some of that background show through, and you'll see some of that even better in my detail shots at the end. But I needed it to be a little messed up. So I'm gonna grab my instant coffee. I've got a whatchamacallit, yogurt cup that's got some instant coffee in it, and I wet it just a little bit to reconstitute it. I did cover up my boy and my girl because I didn't want the coffee on them. I didn't know what it would do for the Crackle, but I made sure that I got some of the splatter on top of my words and then on both sides of the card. And I'll dry this, and that will be the end of this one. Y'all, it is simple, but I love it. I really do like this card. It really speaks to me and my style. It's grungy and yummy and crackly and gold, and I love it. I hope you do too. If you do, make sure to give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed, and let me know what you think. If you've got any questions or comments or whatever, leave those below. All right, y'all. I appreciate so much that you came by and took time out of your day to watch this, and I will see y'all later. Bye.